It was about 4 months ago when Deb and I closed on the sale of our house, sold all our belongings, or gave them away. And then about 3 months ago, we packed everything up that we had left and began a journey of full-time slow travel. And since then, we have crossed the United States by train, crossed the Atlantic Ocean by ship. We've traveled from state to state by car. We've flown from one country to another by plane. We've traveled within countries by bus. And we've stayed everywhere from one-night stays in four-star hotels in big cities to long-term budget apartment stays in little cities and just about everything in between. Now, we also, during that time, created this channel to tell you about our adventures. And if that interests you, we hope that you'll like and subscribe. Today, we want to talk to you about that first 90 days and what we've learned and the lessons that the first 90 days have taught us as we have begun our life as full-time slow travel retirees.
Yeah, it's really been a pretty amazing 90 days, and I'm pretty blown away by the number of incredible experiences that we've already had in this short time. And so before we go on too far with other videos, we wanted to stop and reflect upon these first 90 days now that we've passed that, because there's just a lot to talk about. So we put that into 20 points that we think kind of encapsulate what we've done so far, and hope that this can be helpful. So the first thing we want to talk about, and this is a really huge point if you're just getting started with full-time travel, or if you're just in the stages of preparing for it, is don't let the naysayers sway you. This is a huge point. You're going to come across people that first of all, you're going to have family and friends that really support what you're doing and are wishing you well and are supporting you. Listen to them, okay? Because you are going to also come across some of the other that, for whatever reason, they're going to be seeing this as not such a good idea, or thinking that you're doing something that doesn't make any sense, and thinking that you're going to come to your senses and come back from this when you grow up, that kind of thing. So I just want to mention, when it happens, if you in your gut know that you have this calling to be doing this the way that we did, thank them for their comment, be nice, and go about living your life.
Yeah, I would say my experience was probably 95% or more of the people that we shared our thoughts with about our plans. They were all excited for us as we were, and it was a great experience sharing it. But like Deb was saying, there's that 5 or less, lower percentage that, that they were never mean about it, but their questions and their looks, their tone, you could tell they had questions. And I would say the two most common comments that were clearly well-meaning, but definitely signals that there was doubts about the wisdom of our choices. One, comments about, oh yeah, you'll enjoy that for a while, but the travel will get boring and tiring, and you'll get lonely, and you'll want to come home. That was one comment. And the other one was often about, well, what are you going to do about healthcare? With this, it's actually one of the most common misperceptions about the United States is how we rank healthcare-wise, both in terms of the availability of care, right, and the quality of that care. And we've certainly found in our time that in both cases, neither has been an issue for us. So with that in mind, once you get kind of past that, the next thing that we were talking about,
letting go of stuff.
That's point number 2.
Yeah, and I have to say, of all the 20 points that we're going to be talking about, I think this one is my favorite, because I could not believe how, I know this sounds cliche, but it's because it's so real, how liberating it was to start bagging things and getting them out of the house. The way things have a way of consuming you, and you don't realize it until you just start feeling bogged down by the weight of everything that's all around you. And there are so many wonderful ways to get rid of these things, and so many people will feel better and you'll feel better. And so for us, of course, we sold a lot of things. We sold our house, we sold cars, we sold furniture, we sold a lot of things. But we also gave away a lot of things. We gifted things to people that were perfect and pristine and we never really used them. We just handed things off to people that really needed things. Some people that bought some of our furniture as our way of saying thank you for some of the, especially some of the big purchases, but even the small purchases, we just handed them so many things. One person, he bought an old camera and some other, maybe a VHS. He was into old tech stuff. And I ended up just digging through the house and giving him all the old tech stuff in the end because he looked like he could use it and he couldn't have found it anywhere else. And we were happy with the purchases that we had gotten, and we felt that we could afford to be giving with a lot of our stuff. So we did that. We donated to a lot of charities, and then things that absolutely nobody wanted that had no value to anybody anymore, we just wrapped them up and bagged them. And it was, I can't even say how much a load off our backs it was to be doing this part.
Yeah, there were two different things that I really stuck out in my mind about the process of getting rid of all our stuff. And one was one of Deb's students had a nanny, for lack of a better term, a young woman, and a beautiful little kid that she brought every week for classes with Deb instruction. And I think it's fair to say he was one of her favorite students. But she had just, I think, bought or moved into a new home or a new apartment.
The nanny had moved into a new place and had a 3,000 square foot house that she kept describing as empty.
You're right. So they didn't have any real furnishings and clearly didn't have a lot of money to fill that space. And so she was able to take a lot of what we had, and just every time we were able to give them something, it really felt good knowing that it was going to such a nice people, good home. It really just felt great.
Yeah, it's so true. It was just wonderful that when I mentioned that we were moving and we had things we were going to be selling, and right away the first thing she said was, I have this empty house. And I said, all right, what do you need? She said, everything. So all the furniture that was still left, and it was a considerable amount of furniture, we went and looked through all of it. And she looked, and I said, well, I put together a package price for you. She looked at me and said, what is it? And I gave her the number. She was almost in tears. She said, I thought it was going to be something like twice that. Yeah, of course I can afford this. And so not only did she buy that, but we kept looking through the house and seeing other little gadgets and gizmos. And either she or the husband would say, oh, are you getting rid of those little plastic storage drawers? And we said, yeah, as a matter of fact, we are. Oh, can we add that? And we said, yeah, sure. So we did that. We didn't ask any more for the price. And yeah, it was wonderful because we made a little bit of money and they were absolutely over the moon. It was one of the many rewarding parts to getting rid of stuff. That's why this is maybe my favorite topic of all. It's nice to be in a situation where everybody, I mean, we all say the cliche win-win, but when it really is the case, it's so wonderful. And you just feel like that's what makes the world go round.
You know, when we're talking about transitioning to a life of full-time travel, this is certainly an important part and a big part of that transition. And you'll see, if you do searches on the YouTube here, you'll see a lot of different videos about a thing called Swedish death cleaning. And Deb and I were talking about it as we were going through and doing this video or getting ready to do the video, that it seemed kind of like a misnomer for what we went through. Yeah. But there is one piece of it that's very similar, and in my experience, it was the most rewarding thing about the letting go of stuff process. And that was when I got to give away things that were important to my family, and I gave away things to my siblings, particularly in some of my nieces and nephews. We don't have kids, but we both went through the process, unfortunately, not too long ago, of having gone through our parents' stuff that they died and left. And for any of you who have done that, that that is much more of a chore than any kind of pleasure to go through. But we were able, through the downsizing process and giving away our stuff, to really turn that around. And it was so joyful to go through the process of packing things up and sending them off, in many cases as complete surprise gifts. And my thought was oftentimes, well, if they don't like it, they can throw it away just the same way I can, and in small pieces it won't matter. But in other cases, they got to open up a box or the UPS packing, not knowing what was in it, and being surprised by a family memorabilia piece that they may have forgotten, or other cherished items. And it was just fantastic, receiving their calls and text messages after they got their surprise gifts. So I can't say enough about if you go about the getting rid of stuff with the right positive mind frame, that it will amp you up for what's ahead in the full-time lifestyle.
Yeah, exactly. Don't let the term Swedish death cleaning or death cleaning fool you. This is about life cleaning. This is not just about the people around you after you're gone, simplifying their life. This is about you making your life better as well. It's just, yeah, we can't say enough good things about it. It is absolutely an all-round win-win.
So when we left Las Vegas, the first part of our trip was a cross-country trip on Amtrak. And so I think that brings us to point number 3.
Yeah, the Amtrak experience that we had was quite lengthy. So we had a lot of opportunity to experience train travel in the United States. And for both of us, I think it's fair to say we hadn't really done too much of it in the past. And we traveled through Amtrak, through different destinations on Amtrak for 3 weeks. And it was a really great experience. For one thing, there are ways that you can get reduced fare by buying in a block, and the train trips are surprisingly cheap. You just have to make sure that when you're planning a travel, some of the trips that you want to book might not be trips that you can incorporate into like a book of 10. Let's say there might be a trip that they say no, you can't pay for that with the book of travel that you bought. You have to buy that separately. But I don't want to say that to deter anybody from looking into this. We would actually absolutely do this again. It went very, very well.
Yeah, it's we used what's called the Amtrak Rail Pass, and the Rail Pass deal is it's $499, or was for us $499 per person, and you get 10. I think the word they use is segments, or 10 legs that you can travel, and a leg or a segment is basically you tell Amtrak you want to go from point A to point B, and as long as you don't have to change trains, even though there are stops between points A and B, that's one leg. And so, for example, it was one leg for us to get from Las Vegas to Chicago, which was, we left late at night, so there were actually 2 nights that we spent on the train to get to Chicago. But that would be an example, right? So that's one leg. But as a different example was when we went to New York to Miami. We had to change trains in Tampa. So in Tampa, because we had to change trains, even though the last train ride was only about an hour and a half or something like that, those were 2 legs. So you have to be careful about how you count the legs of the 10 segments to make sure that you're planning accordingly. But like in our case, as it turned out, we didn't use all 10 legs. It was still a great value. So highly recommend the Amtrak Rail Pass. Now there's some caveats to that.
Yeah, one of them is and even outside of the United States, you need to be prepared that there can be delays. So if you are planning a trip with 10 minutes between to transfer from one train to the next, you might make it, you might not. So you want to be looking into what the next departure will be for the train that you're waiting to catch, or try to see if you want to get something sooner.
I was just saying, it's about the story about what happened to us in Kingman, Arizona.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so when we left Las Vegas, and Las Vegas doesn't have an Amtrak stop, and so what they do is you go to the Las Vegas airport. And from the airport, they take you on a van. And the first train station where you begin to travel is from Kingman, Arizona. And the Kingman, Arizona station is literally a building with 1 room in it, if you don't count the 2 bathrooms. But that's it. And our train, I think, was supposed to leave like at 12:30. Something like that, 12:30 in the morning.
In the morning, that's right.
Right? And we got there on time, actually, I think a little bit early. So we were about 20 minutes early.
Breathing sighs of relief that we were going to catch the train.
Right. Only to find out that
there was a little delay to begin with, which turned into a very big delay. And we ended up leaving at 2:30 in the morning. And we were just sitting in this funny little train stop talking about, oh my God, I can't believe we got stuck here for 2 hours. It's 2:30 in the morning. And the guy sitting next to us said, hey, look, it could have been worse. They sometimes just cancel this altogether, and they don't give you any advance warning. You're just stuck there all night.
Yeah, and then when we did get on the train, they had other train traffic problems. You may or may not know about Amtrak. The odd thing about Amtrak is they don't own most of their tracks. I think it's like something like 70 or 80% of the tracks that they drive on are owned by other private railway companies. And so as a result, Amtrak is always has to wait for those tracks to be cleared from the other traffic. And sometimes that means because they know the delays are coming, that means that the Amtrak train goes much slower. So when we left Kingman, we were traveling between 5 and 10 miles per hour for I think the first 3 or 4 hours. So we weren't just 2 hours behind when we got on the train. We kept falling behind after we boarded the train. But
did we ever catch up? I think we did at some point.
Right.
Miraculously.
Amazingly enough, by the time we got to Chicago, so that would have been, I want to say it was like 30 hours total on the train, something like that. We were 25 minutes late in Chicago, which was just...
Yeah, it wasn't bad.
It was amazing. Right. But yes, so that's one of the caveats is be prepared for the scheduling delays that come with Amtrak. There's a couple more caveats with respect to the rail pass and traveling on Amtrak.
What were they? I've forgotten.
Well,
I was already moving on to point 4 in my brain. So
Okay. So one of them was, we did really enjoy it. Let's be clear, we really liked traveling on Amtrak.
Yeah, it was nice.
The overnights were not so great. Maybe
They were
less
okay
great for me than for them.
They were okay if they were empty and you could really spread out, but that wasn't always the case. And what it wasn't, you're basically kind of stacked in sardines and kind of, trying to get comfortable, which wasn't really going to happen.
Yeah, the seats are super comfortable, for normal daytime travel or regular travel. They're much better, for example, than any first class seat on an airplane. Much better. But at least for me, they were not what I would call comfort sleeping.
Yeah, and what people have said, we didn't try this, but other people have gotten the sleeper cars, and they've said that those aren't phenomenally comfortable either.
Yeah, so we're both a little bit claustrophobic. And so we were both concerned about getting a sleeping car or a roomette, which are other options. But that was reason number one, we didn't do that. Reason number two is it's not an option on a rail pass. You can't upgrade, so you should know if you use rail pass, you have to go on coach. Right? So the other thing about the comfort of traveling on Amtrak, particularly if you're traveling on coach, would be that you want to make sure that you come prepared with the necessaries. And two of those necessaries would be
the pillows, but not the little like semi donut things that you get in the airport. Those things really stink. You end up feeling the sort of neck whiplash after them. So we're not fans of those. But you can get these really wonderful flat air pillows that you can blow up, and they're pretty nice and comfortable. And another nice thing about them is that when they have no air in them, they wrap into something really small and really light. And anytime you can find things like that for your travel, you want to be looking at those and we're going to get into a lot of discussion in another video about how to pack. But you want to keep thinking as little and light as you can go, because things that are bigger than you really need them to be, you just keep adding them and they're going to add up a lot more than you think they will. So this is very comfortable. It's not just good for train travel, it's also good for any kind of travel. It's good for bus, it's good for airplane, is to get the inflatable pillows. And the other thing, not so much for plane, but definitely for train or a long bus, is to make sure that you always have snacks with you, because you just don't know when it's going to be that they're going to pull over to a rest stop or somewhere where you can get something to eat that is decent. So those are two things you just want to keep in mind.
Yeah, on Amtrak, they do have snacks available, although usually they close the galley where you can buy the snack bar, if you will, closes usually around 11 o'clock at night. But during the day, you can buy snacks. But if you're conscious about what you eat and try to be healthy about the foods that you put into your body, and we are exceptionally so, the choices become much, much more limited. So yeah, it's a great idea to bring snacks along. So that's really point 4 is when you travel on Amtrak, make sure you bring snacks if you're traveling in coach, because that may be all you're living on to eat for the next however long your train trip is. And the second point is we highly recommend the air pillow, not the neck donuts. The air pillows are vastly superior. So we took Amtrak across the country, and that across the country really was. We went Las Vegas to Chicago, Chicago to Cleveland, Cleveland to Pittsburgh, or Toledo, Toledo to Pittsburgh, Pittsburgh to New York.
New York to Sarasota.
New York to Sarasota, and then Sarasota to Miami. And so when we got to Miami, by then we had been traveling for about 3 weeks, and we really believed that we had done our research and done our planning, and we thought we had kind of everything lined up and ready to go, at least through our travels across the Atlantic and into Portugal. There was, however, one piece left that we thought had been buttoned down that wasn't. It turned out we spent quite a bit of our short visit with friends in Miami trying to finish off this last piece. And that brings us to point number 5.
This is talking about the phone and internet services. It's not as simple when it comes to the phone. It's not as simple as taking the phone service that you currently have and just going somewhere and calling people with it. It's not going to happen. You have to rework what you've got. You're probably going to get rid of the service that you have, get some other kinds of service. Definitely, if you haven't already gotten a WhatsApp account, you should do it, because so many people worldwide, that is how they are communicating, by phone and by text. It is absolutely terrific and very, very easy to use. And then the internet situation, also, there are a lot of new things to learn about. And I am going to hand this over to Greg, because he is the tech genius between the two of us.
Well, this topic is one that deserves its own video, and we will give it its own video.
For sure.
But I want to tell you about, there's 3 key concepts to understand for helping you plan for your phone and internet services. That is, for most people in the United States, you have a cell phone carrier on your phone. I assume most people are having some kind of smartphone with Android, iPhone, whatever it may be. And that carrier provides you with 3 important functions. 1, it gives you the ability to send text messages. 2, it gives you the ability to speak over the phone with people. And 3, you get access to the internet. Those really are 3 different services. And when you travel to Europe, now one solution to the problem is continue with your provider. Most providers will allow you to do that. But be aware that they charge pretty hefty premiums for the convenience they give you of having international services. For example, we've cut our bill down from about $170 a month for the 2 of us down to about $30 a month. But to do it, we needed to keep in mind that we needed to break those services apart. And so we use WhatsApp for phone calls. We also use Google Voice, and that helps us with phone calling and text messaging. And then for our data, that is to get internet, we use an eSIM. The one that we use is Airlo. But there are lots of different options, and like I said, to get deeper into the weeds of this would be worthy of its own video, and we will give you that video at another time. So, but the irony was, I had done all that research. I really thought we were good to go, and one of the keys is with regard to the eSIM is you want to wait until the last moment to activate, if not install, the eSIM, because it's typically based on a timing issue. And because our next step from Miami was going to be a transatlantic cruise, we were 2 weeks away from wanting to install the eSIMs. So we didn't do any of that. I thought that we had the system laid out ready when we were in Miami, but we wanted to check on that just to be sure, because we didn't want to get to Portugal and find out, oops. Well, in fact, in Miami, we figured out we were going to have an oops. And so God bless our friend Miguel, who, instead of giving us his magnificent tour of Miami, and believe me, he could give magnificent tours, he instead spent basically all afternoon with us at T-Mobile and Verizon and assorted other places until we figured out, finally, how to get our phones right. So it does take some time and effort to make it happen. But once you've got it in place, it's surprisingly easy to use and operate, and definitely cheaper than what we used to have.
The nice thing is you only have to make those decisions really once, and then that's it. You're all set.
So when we got to Miami, we stayed with a friend I mentioned, Miguel, and it was kind of a important point in the trip because it was the end of our train trip across the country. It was kind of our staging, getting ready to embark on the cruise. And by then, having spent 3 weeks living out of our carry-on suitcases, I think we had a much better sense of what we had done right and what we could have done better in terms of packing. And so that's going to bring us to point number 6.
You really don't need as much as you think. Now, I know that is going all over YouTube videos all the time. Pack light, pack light, pack light. Well, they're all right. That is exactly where you want to be. The less that you pack, the happier you're going to be. And it's certainly, of course, it has to do with if you're flying, when you're taking a cruise, a transcontinental cruise, or train travel, anything that you're doing, you're going to have a much easier time getting around when you're carting less things. And if it comes that you really could have used a third t-shirt or something like that, you can always find them on your travels. You're going to be traveling to places, for the most part, that have a lower cost of living than the United States. To pick up a shirt or a pair of pants is going to cost you nothing, and you might as well just wait and see if these are things that you're going to need before you pack more than you want, and then start regretting it later on.
Yeah. Now, packing is a science, and again, this is another one that is definitely video worthy that we're going to do separately. But the kind of the overview of it is, at least what we did in terms of trying to figure it out, is first we came up with a packing list. Highly recommend that you start with a list. That is, start with a list that isn't looking at your clothes, because it makes you think about what do you really need and what do you not really need. Then once you've come up with that list, then match your actual items to the list, get them ready, pack them up, right? What we found was, surprisingly for our lists, most of them, we were able to put all the items on our lists into our bags. That seemed like a good thing. But we were able to put them all in our bags with a lot of stuffing and pushing and grinding and pulling and tugging.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't think Greg made some of the mistakes that I made, because when I realized how compactly we could pack the way we were doing things, I got a little bit carried away, and I started to think, well, I really would like to have that one extra t-shirt and this really cute little top. I mean, I might not need it, but I would just love to have it in case we go out to the opera or concert or this and that. And I kind of kept sneaking in little things and kept thinking, wow, this is great. The way we're packing so tightly, I can pack all of this into my suitcase. And the next thing I knew,
you got to carry those things.
Oh my God, carry, forget it. I couldn't roll it down the street. So I kind of realized that just because you can do something, it doesn't necessarily mean that you should. And again, that was my liberating experience 2.0 of getting rid, bit by bit, letting go of things. And I just kept saying, you really don't need this. And a couple ounces here and a couple ounces there, letting go. Well, they become pounds or kilos or whatever you want to call it. And it does make a difference.
Yeah, I think over the course of the 90 days, we both managed to shed more and more. And now we've gotten to the point now where we kind of have this basic rule that if we're going to buy a thing, it means we have to get rid of a thing. So thing for thing is kind of the rule now. And that helps us decide not to buy things.
I have another rule also, is if I see something and I really love it, I ask myself, what will you do with it? Mm-hmm. And then if it's, oh, well, it's a shirt, I'll wear it. And I'll ask myself, do you really need that? Again, and if I can't keep justifying it, I leave it in the clothes, in the window, and I just continue window shopping and admiring what I see and not picking it up. And I'll tell you, there isn't one thing that I've left in a store that I have regretted not picking up along the way.
Yeah. So we were able to lighten our load initially. I guess the kind of the first big phase was when we got on the cruise, right? That is before we got on the cruise. And that brings us to the cruise itself. So let's talk about point number 7.
The transatlantic cruise that we took was such a fabulous adventure, and we'd never done anything like it. The last time and the only other time that we had taken a cruise was from Barcelona to Greece, and we took stops along the way. Almost every day we docked at a port and we went out and spent the whole day in different cities. So it was nothing like this. This time we were pretty much 14 days at sea. And it was amazing. There were so many activities. I mean, my eyes popped the first time I saw, number of activities today, 79. And I was like, really? And yeah, they had so many things. And me personally, I love exercise and dance, and I would go to all of their events. There were sometimes 7 or 8. They were 30 minutes long, but still 3.5 to 4 hours a day. You can't do all the activities that they have listed, even if you're just focusing on the ones that you especially love. And you go to them, all of them are packed with people.
How many dance classes a day?
8. So
how many did you do?
Okay, sometimes I did 7.
Yeah.
So, but it felt incredible, and lots of people show up for all of the events. It's very it's invigorating, and you just feel so much great energy from the people around you. It inspires you to keep wanting to do more. And the hardest part, honestly, about that whole schedule is getting to the end of the day and sometimes going, oh, I wanted to do one more thing, and I just couldn't fit it into my schedule. That's what will happen. That's your problem, if you will. It's never going to be a lack of things to do.
Yeah. So there were some things about it, 2 things that I remember really stuck out. Number one, I'm generally okay. I've never had a problem with seasickness, but Deb is a little more sensitive to it. And so that was a very big concern that we had when we were planning the cruise. And what we learned, the really great advice that we got was, number one, save money by going on a lower deck. So actually, it's a kind of an irony about cruising, that the higher decks cost more money, but you get much more motion on those higher decks. And motion, for anybody who's sensitive to that, is not a good thing. So save money by staying on a lower deck. But conversely, spend money by getting a cabin that's in the middle of the deck. So you usually,
Got a bee.
Big bee flew by. Yeah, you have to pay extra or a premium to get a cabin in the middle of the ship, as opposed to one that's in the forward or aft of the ship. And the lowest cost cabins typically are what they refer to as guaranteed cabins, where you don't get to choose, because the cruise line will assign the cabin for you. But if you're sensitive to motion, pay the money to get a midship cabin and save some money getting the lower cabin. Do not go with the guaranteed cabin. And a little side note is you'll have reserved a midship lower cabin, and you will save money. And then what will happen is you're likely going to get offers to upgrade, and you will see that those offers to upgrade are much lower in cost than what it would have cost you originally to have purchased a higher grade cabin. Don't fall for it. Don't fall for it. And the reason I say don't fall for it is not that you're not getting the value. You do, if that's what you want. But in most cases, it won't be what you want, because, again, it's like getting a guaranteed upgrade. That is to say, you make it from a ocean view, lower deck, midship cabin to a balcony cabin. And a balcony is an upgrade, right? But you don't know. That balcony you might be going from deck 5 to deck 14. You may be going deck 5 in the middle to deck 14 at the front. And believe me, as we experienced, when the waves are 20 feet high, there is an enormous difference in the motion you feel in that boat, or I should say ship, when you're on deck 5 in the middle and you're deck 14 in the front.
That's right.
And so if motion sickness is something you're concerned about, again, save money by being on a low deck, spend money by being in the middle of that deck.
Also, spend a little bit of money and come prepared. Get some Dramamine, get some ginger pills, and bring those wristbands for seasickness. They all help. They all make a difference. because we took a trip that the cruise that we took was supposed to be very calm waters, and especially as we get out from the center of the ocean and we start approaching Portugal, it was supposed to be calmer waters. And the crazy thing was we should have been out of the area where there was really any potential for a lot of choppy waves. And instead, the day before we got to Portugal, or maybe 2 days before, all of a sudden we were whammed with it, and we were having very, very high waves. The good thing was we had already been accustomed to the cruise for 14 days, so I think we were pretty well adapted. It wasn't so bad, but we were also prepared with Dramamine as needed, and the bands, and we did have a cabin that was somewhere in the center of the ship and on a low floor. So all of that helped. And then the other thing is, as much as you can, at least this was my experience, and I tend to be sensitive to this kind of thing, and I really didn't have a problem on this cruise. If you can lie down and go to sleep, I think that worked for me, because there was one night that I went to sleep, I woke up in the morning, and I was telling Greg, I don't think it was that bad that last night, because I didn't have a problem. He said it was the worst that it's been.
Yeah.
And I had no idea.
Yeah.
It was fine.
Yeah. So I think, I know you mentioned two other important, natural remedies are ginger pills.
I mentioned it.
Oh yeah, and green apples.
I didn't mention it. Yeah, that's true.
So, but those all help with for people that have motion sickness. So we talked a little bit about packing light, but we really next point really sunk in with us after we'd been 3 weeks on a train, and really after we had boarded and disembarked from the ship. And point number 8 is about the value of carry-on baggage versus larger checked baggage.
You don't have to be waiting for checked luggage. And again, it's much lighter packing, very easy to cart around. And again, we're going to do a more in detail video just about that. Carry-ons that have special features like very, very sturdy wheels and double wheels and wheel on all 4 sides, and things that make them really, really easy to cart around. And if you're well prepared with packing lightly, those carry-ons are your friend.
Yeah, we had when we got off of the ship in Lisbon, we were, I want to say, 45-minute walk maybe from the apartment we were staying in. But we were able, because we had carry-ons, we were able to manage that. We walked, and it was a beautiful walk. We were all excited because we were coming into Lisbon, and the walk from the port to the neighborhood that we stayed in. I can't remember the name of the port. The name of the neighborhood was.
Oh.
But the neighborhood we stayed in was a great location.
It was fantastic.
And the walk was really wonderful because it took us through a few of the most prominent Lisbon neighborhoods. So we were really grateful to have that walk. It was. And if you've ever been to Lisbon, you know 2 things about it. It has a lot of cobblestone and even more hills. So I'm not going to say that the carry-on bags were without their challenges. They certainly had challenges.
Yeah, we were up at almost the top of a hill, and so it was definitely a challenge, but we did it. We
did it. And more importantly, if we had checked our luggage, we could not have done it. We would have had to have taken, a taxi or a ride share, and we would have missed out on what was a great and memorable walk. And that has proven to be the case many times over. So that's one of the great values of carry-on versus checked. But the other piece that I want to make a note of is how much better it was that when we got onto the ship, we were able to go right away to our cabin with our bags. Whereas if we checked our bags, sometimes you have to wait hours to get your luggage. And the same thing is true when you're disembarking from the ship. We were able to leave with our bags right when we were ready to go. Everybody else had to make their bags available the night before for them to be collected by the ship's crew. And then, of course, once the crew collects them, you then have to go into the cruise terminal and collect your bags from there. So it was a huge difference for us to be able to go basically right off the ship with our bags and literally from the ship onto the street without any delays.
It's worth it to get one of those little weight scales and just keep them with you. And as we've been saying all along, you really want to pack the minimal amount of stuff with you, but we did find that this has been a good piece to have with us.
Yeah, that's point 9 is a luggage weight scale is, well, worth its weight. We found out on, I think it was Transavia, that was the airline that we took to get from Portugal when we were in Albufeira, but that it left from Faro Airport to Paris. We took Transavia, and that was our first kind of eye-opener about how important weight was. What we were concerned about was the size of the bags, and in the US, that's typically all you're concerned about. But in Europe, the airlines definitely care about how much weight is on your bags, and that will determine whether you can carry on or not. Different airlines will have different requirements, but most of them, if not all of them in Europe, do want to know, and they actually weigh your bags to find out if you've complied. So that's point number 9 is bring a luggage weight scale. Point number 10, a second important item to include that we learned, especially when we got to Albufeira and had to go across the street to buy our groceries. So point number 10 was the value of a secondary backpack.
Yeah, I have to say, Greg did a lot of the research in getting our bags, and he picked a fantastic couple of carry-ons, one for each of us, and then he got a personal bag for himself and a backpack for me, because I was saying I was really interested in getting a backpack, and he got me a big, beautiful backpack that was so wonderfully organized. And then he comes back one day with this tiny little sack. And I said, what's that? He said, oh, we're taking this with us. I said, what is it? And he opens it up and he pops it out. And it's this extremely lightweight little backpack. And I said, we have a little backpack to go with my big backpack? And he said, this is a really good idea. We are using that little backpack all the time. It is amazing for going grocery shopping. It's fine, of course, to get the regular recyclable plastic bags and use those, but to have a nice little lightweight backpack, it's fantastic. And the way it's not just lightweight, but the way it rolls up into this tiny little ball of nothing to cart with us, also really wonderful. It's great in situations where, let's say, we're taking a long train, which we're doing a lot of that in Europe, and what we did with the Amtrak, of course, where having an extra piece of luggage is really not a problem. And it is the easiest thing in the world to put your snacks in there and not go rummaging through your other bags trying to find a way to make it work. So highly recommend it. It has huge benefits on your travels. So this is the little backpack. It weighs, oh my God, nothing. It's feather light, and this is how much space that it takes to pack. Now Greg is going to take it out of the backpack sack and show you exactly what you've got here.
Like pulling the rabbit out of the hat.
So I keep calling it the small backpack, but as you can see, it's not really that small. You can stuff the same amount of groceries into this pretty much as what you're going to get into a recyclable plastic bag. And it's easy. It's easy to wear on your back. Fantastic. Highly recommend.
I think this backpack was $9 or $10.
Oh, really?
So, yeah,
That was it?
It was definitely one of the best value items we purchased for our trips. So the next thing that we want to talk about is what it's been like to actually be away from home. And you remember that one of the things that the naysayers focused on was kind of the loneliness and how much we might miss being at home. But as we said, that really hasn't been the case. And that brings us to point number 11.
Yeah, I also want to mention that if I had thought about this 20 years ago, I wouldn't have done it. And the reason is I knew that for one thing, my mom would have just been devastated to not have me sort of close by in the States. But the thing is that besides the fact that we don't have our parents with us anymore, but on top of that, things have changed so much, and we can stay connected to anybody that we want to in the world in a way that wasn't possible a couple of decades ago. The way that you don't have to worry about calling people at $4 a minute and time, okay, it's been 30 seconds, it's been 45 seconds. You don't have to do that anymore. So it's amazing. And you can do the not just Zoom, but FaceTime, anything where you've got video along with the audio. And I just want to step away from this for a second to say that I spent years, the past 15 years, teaching music, including online, and I have students that I was working with for years and years. I never met them. We'd only been working by video over the internet, and it felt like being in the same room with them. So there's a whole new level of connection that wasn't possible decades ago, and it's made all the difference in the world in feeling that we're still close to everybody, our family, friends, everybody that we want to be close to.
Yeah, and I think one of the other things, in terms of technologies that help us feel closer to home, is that in the past, particularly if you travel to a foreign country, especially if the foreign country was one where using a language that you didn't speak or understand, if you were there for a while, kind of get the longing to see your familiar programming and television programming. Well, nowadays, that's certainly not a problem. And the key pieces there, the key technology that we use are, in our case, we use a Fire Stick, although there's other similar products out there, but we use Fire Stick. And the other piece that helps us is a VPN, so that we can effectively let people in the world believe that we are still in the United States, and that gives us access to all of the programming and then some that we would have gotten and did get while we were back at home. And so, when we're in our apartments or in our hotels or even on the ship, we have access to essentially everything that we had access to at home. And in addition, because technology has so far improved, in the event that we don't, well, you know what? You can almost always go out and find a place, whether it's, for example, while we were in Albufeira, we did not have access because of the paid subscriptions for the NBA playoffs. And I'm a huge fan of the Cavaliers, Cleveland Cavaliers. Go Cavs. We'll get them next year. So in Albufeira, they were in the playoffs. And although I couldn't get them on Fire Stick, you know what? There was always a bar in town. And there I was at 2:30 in the morning rooting on my Cavs, sometimes all alone, but rooting nevertheless. And I actually had great fun while I was rooting on the Cavs, watching in the bar, and sending text messages back and forth with my fellow Cavs fan friends back in Ohio and in the States. So it really always felt not so far away from home.
Yeah, it's really, there's never been a better time in history to be able to go anywhere and feel that you're just not separated from anything that you don't want to be separated from. Even something like social media, even having Facebook. Some of your friends, you may not be in the habit of calling them. I mean, who even calls anybody anymore? But you may not be in the habit of sending them texts or sending them photos of where you're going. But if they're on your Facebook list, it's the easiest thing in the world to post something about there you are, and maybe they see it, they comment on it, and you get to comment back and forth with them, or just reach out to them with a message. There's so many ways to be connected to the people you want to be connected to and to the things that you want to be connected to. It's just such a great time to be doing something like this.
We're talking about how home doesn't feel that far away, and it's really a culture issue. That is, we're experiencing new cultures, but we're not losing our home culture. And that really brings us to point number 12, because an important piece of culture is the food that we eat. And as I mentioned earlier, Deb and I, and especially Deb, particularly conscious of eating healthy. And eating healthy means knowing exactly what you're putting into your body. And as I say, this brings us to point number 12, which was perhaps a little bit surprising with respect to what our expectations were and what reality has been since we've arrived in Europe.
Yeah, I have been, among other things, reading ingredients of everything I buy absolutely religiously for almost 40 years now. So I didn't change that habit just because we're here. I've been doing it for so long. But something that I found kind of interesting is that one of the posts that I would see show up from time to time on Facebook was somebody putting a couple of screenshots together, and they'd say, well, this is the list of, ketchup ingredients of this brand, and it is, list a mile long, and look at the short list of the same brand of ketchup in the UK, and there's this tiny little list, and they'd say, you see all these bad ingredients that they put in the United States, but they don't put when they sell it to other countries. So I was curious. I really wanted to see if those are genuine memes or if somebody did a little photoshopping or whatever. I did some work to check this out and see if what those memes that I was seeing, if those were true. And what I found was not really. When we were in Albufera. Now, Albufera is a region that has been declared GMO free for a pretty long time now. And I thought that was wonderful. And I got there and I discovered that doesn't mean that everything you buy, you don't have to read the ingredients because everything's going to be wonderful. Not at all. We bought some peanut butter at one point. I opened it and it was hard as a rock. And I know that peanut butter is supposed to be gooey and oily. It's not supposed to be like the Rock of Gibraltar in a jar, you know. So I read the ingredients and it had hydrogenated oil. I mean, that thing, you know, that's an ingredient that had been called a carcinogen since the 80s. And this was a Trader Joe's brand. This is something that is supposed to be, you know, so many people swear by. So I did realize that you still have to read ingredients. Another thing that I would see, for example, is that's the dog in the background. I think he wants a snack.
You go ahead.
I'm going to take care of the little poochie woochie.
Yeah.
So I have been, again, reading all the ingredients. We're big fans of avoiding artificial ingredients, artificial colors, artificial dyes, that kind of thing, and many, many other things. So you wouldn't necessarily see such and such an artificial color or a preservative. You would see instead E200, E320, E this, E that. The E is for Europe, and then the number is for the number that they assign that chemical. So you look at E220, you have no idea what that is. So I just want to point that out because if you are food conscious and a mega foodie like I am, and Greg also to some extent, maybe not as religiously, but you do still need to keep an eye out and read ingredients if that's something that you're used to doing. You're just going to be wanting to do that everywhere you go.
Yeah, so I think that's point number 12. Keep reading those ingredient labels. If that's been in your past in the U.S., you're certainly going to need to be doing that in Europe. So I think this brings us to our next point. And one of the most common questions that we got asked before we left, when people were curious about how we were doing about this and what we were going to do, was the question, how do you figure out where you're going to stay? People go on vacation, it's pretty easy. You pick a place or a few places for a couple of weeks, but when you're planning on traveling full time, how do you find where you're going to stay for weeks at a time and then go somewhere else for more weeks at a time? And so we found a few keys, and we'll talk about those keys in point number 13 to where you should choose your long-term accommodation.
Right, because maybe some people are going to be okay with renting cars, but we are not. We want to be able to get around a lot on foot. We want to get lots of healthy walking in every day, but we also want to be connected to some decent transportation. We don't want to get somewhere and feel stranded and go, oh, and we get 28 more days like this. So our two main criteria that we realized that we need are, number one, to be close to local public transportation. And then the other one is to have a grocery store. Now, the grocery store, it was really great in Albufera. We had an Aldi literally across the street from where we were staying. And it was a great way to start. And then we discovered later that there's a chain of grocery stores in Portugal that we kind of fell a little bit in love with.
Pingo Doce.
Pingo Doce, yes. And the Pingo Doce was a 15-minute walk away. And we discovered being there that actually that still worked out pretty well because it was refreshing to get out and walk a little bit. And it was certainly 3/4 of a mile for us was absolutely manageable. But if you do have a little bit of mobility issues, you're going to be more interested in having something across the street or down the street and not 3/4 of a mile away, even though, again, it worked out for us. I think longer than that, we might not have been crazy about it. And even, I have to say, actually, even as convenient as it was, and as well as it worked out, there's certainly something to be said for, you don't want to wake up one morning and feel like you're coming down with a cold and you're exhausted and you need to sleep a lot and have to walk for 15 minutes to get to the grocery store. So it is nice to have a grocery store nice and close. And then again, the public transportation is also a big deal for what we're doing.
Yeah, I think if you get those two things right in your long-term accommodations, if you're staying for several weeks now, if you're staying for a couple of days, it's a little different because you might not be, looking so much for groceries. But certainly, if you're staying for more than 10 days, 2 weeks, and you plan on cooking at home, so to speak, the grocery store location is pretty key. And the other thing is to know where the nearby pharmacies and medical facilities are. And in our case, again, in Albufeira, turned out to be really helpful that we had a dentist that was literally next door that Deb used, and the
There's
pharmacy
a story that goes with
similarly
that
close.
also. There's a story that goes with that, but that's going to be for a separate video about our medical experiences so far in Europe, and I think that's an eye-opener that definitely deserves its own video.
Yeah, but if you're staying for an extended period in one location, you certainly hope that you don't have any need for medical assistance. But if you do, and you have limited transportation options, like we do without a car, then you certainly want to make sure that that those providers are close to you. So the next point that we want to talk about, kind of general experience that we've learned, is in terms of the value of slow travel and just how much we're enjoying it. This
is something that neither of us has ever done before, and I think that most people that aren't full-time slow travelers might not have experience in this the concept of going to one place and being there for 29 to 30 days rather than a long weekend getaway or a week or two in Paris, something like that. Slow travel is a whole other world. First off, and I know this is a big point for most people, the cost. It is unbelievably cheaper than when you're doing fast travel, because the places then that you're looking at, it could be B&Bs, it can be hotels. You're looking at the ones that give you a significant price reduction when you are staying for a minimum of, for some of them it's 28 days, for some of them it's 30 days. You're looking for those, and it absolutely cuts your budget, it cuts your expenses way down, and gives you a lot more potential for meeting a nice low budget that you can manage. And it really does turn out to be a load off your back when you see that this is as doable as people are saying that it is. The slow travel has been a game changer for us.
Well, that's the wind blowing the door
windy.
shut.
So getting to another game changer.
Yeah, so the reason you just heard the door slam shut is because we're in a beautiful home here in Guildford.
With a beautiful dog.
Surrey, and a beautiful dog. You heard us talk about the dog.
Yeah, she comes, I'll put her up, she can wave to you. She's so cute.
That's Tink. So we are pet sitting for Tink here in Guildford, and we've been here now for almost 2 weeks. And it brings us to point number 15 in our list. That is, pet sitting has been a budget game changer.
Yeah, I want to mention one thing, though, right off the bat about pet sitting. It is not a vacation. It is a job. You have to, your first agenda has to be to take care of what you agreed to do. It could be pet sitting, which it usually is. It could be keeping the place really, really clean. It could be watering plants. It could be watering 100 plants, okay? But if you commit to it, you have to take it seriously. You have to do a really good job because you said you would. Now, that being said, this is our 7th sit, I believe, in all. And our experiences have all been wonderful. The pets have been delightful, and the hosts that we've worked with have been absolutely the sweetest people. There hasn't been anybody we've met so far that we didn't absolutely love. So it's been absolutely a terrific experience. Now, along with having a lot of responsibilities, you also have to know that you're going to be working with animals, and some of them you can be gone from them for several hours and you can still go out and see things that you want to see. But sometimes you're going to be working with a pet who has anxiety and can't stand for you to be gone more than a couple hours or more than an hour. And even we've had situations where the hosts have said, please don't leave our pet alone. And with the last one, we were in Wales and we couldn't leave the dog. So if we had to go shopping, which by the way was in a little town outside of where we were, we had to take a bus to go to do the groceries. We took the dog on the bus with us. We go to the grocery store. One of us would go in and buy the groceries and come out, and the other person would stay with the dog. If we wanted to go out to the local pub for a nice dinner out, dog came with us. So everywhere we went, we did our nature walks. Of course, the dog came with us for that. But we could not, let's say, go out to not that there was a concert, because we were staying in a settlement where maybe 100 people lived, and then the next closest thing was a little hamlet where, I don't know, maybe 200 people lived, something like that. So there wasn't much to do that you couldn't go to without a dog. And a lot of areas here where we're staying right now, this is the UK, are so dog friendly. You can bring your dog to any pub, you can take them on any public transportation, so it's all doable. But at the same time, your time is not your own. So there are things that you need to know. You need to be responsible and committed to what you're doing. But again, if this works for you, it is an absolutely fantastic thing. And again, I don't know if this existed 20 years ago, but it's just another point where there's never been a better time to be doing what we're doing. Slow travel, full-time traveling, nomadic retirement lifestyle. It's never been better time than it is right now.
Yeah, if you want to get a feel for what that looks like, we have a video of our pet sitting gig our pet sitting gig in Snowdonia, the National Park of Wales, and the beautiful little trail hound called Abby. So you check out that video and you might enjoy seeing how spectacular the scenery is, and how wonderful Abby was.
Yeah, for us, it wasn't at all a chore to be with her all day long. She was a sweetheart. She's a lovely, lovely dog, and accustomed to being with people and being around dogs, highly socialized. It was great. It worked perfectly for us.
Yeah. One of the great parts about doing the pet sitting, there are many, and by the way, if that interests you, drop a comment to us, and by all means let us know, and we'll be happy to share more information about the platform that we use that helps us vet the homeowners, and the homeowners vet us to make sure that we've got a good match. But it's been a great part of the experience by doing the pet sitting. As I said, we're here in Guildford, about 25, 30 miles outside of London. And when you're pet sitting, we're able to stay in much more residential communities. We are not in the tourist centers. Even when we were in Snowdonia, although it's a national park, we were very much embedded with the residents of that area. And so it was the real benefit of pet sitting as opposed to staying in tourist-centric hotels. But when you're doing that, it also gives you a much better flavor for what the different communities are like. And the experience, and I think most recently on our 90 days of travels, the most obvious difference was the days we spent in New York City compared to what we've seen here in Europe. And that really brings us to what is point number 16, about what a real melting pot is.
Yeah, it's a term that you hear a lot in the United States. This city is the melting pot for cultures all over the world. A melting pot, I think, is actually a pretty good description, but not in the way that most people think it is. A melting pot is a place where, yes, more people from all around the world might come and settle in that particular city. But at that point, their culture really does kind of start to melt away, where lots of people are reading the same newspapers and having kind of the same opinions, and you hear pretty much the same outlook on life. But when you are traveling to their countries and meeting them on their turf and on their terms and soaking up their culture, it is completely different. And greatest thing you can do is let them do the talking, listen a lot, ask them questions, try their food, try their language. Even if you're just saying please and thank you and you're welcome, it goes a long way. Be a part of what they're about, and it is completely different from anything that you will go through by meeting people from a foreign country, but in your country. I know it becomes their country, but they're uprooting where they were to come to where you currently live. You do that part and go somewhere else, and the experience that you have, it's amazing. That's all I can say.
So let's talk about point number 17, which is
getting back to the miracles of modern technology.
Yeah, and sometimes not.
Screenshots are your friend. As you know, I'm sure you probably know, you're going to need passports, possibly visas, all kinds of other paperwork when you travel. All of these documents are important. It's also really important to have screenshots and paper copies, just in case, God forbid, anything goes wrong. You have to have some sort of backup. But screenshots are important in other ways as well. You definitely want to screenshot, let's say, a map of where you're going to be in terms of when you get to your destination. Now you just need to take a short train trip or bus trip or a little walk to get to where you're going. And then suddenly, where you're at, your internet just cuts out. So you do want to have screenshots of that. You also want to screenshot and write down the address of where you're going. So you just want to be prepared in these little ways, because it's so easy to get used to, in this day and age, thinking that your phone is God and it's always going to be there and it's always going to give you all the information that you need. And you don't want to find out the hard way that ain't necessarily so.
Did you find out the hard way?
Me? No, I've never been lost in my life. I mean, like, including today, actually, you don't know this. I got lost coming back, and we've been here for almost 2 weeks. I got lost coming back. That's why you said, come back.
Yeah.
You said, come back in 15 minutes because I want to do this video. And I said, don't worry, I'm going to do this one errand. And I came back like half an hour later because I got lost coming back from town, a trip that I do all the time. But I decided to take the path a little bit differently, and the next thing I knew, around and around I went. So.
All right. So let's talk now about point number 18, and what we have experienced with regard to our budget and the cost of living this way. And I just want to start and kind of frame it for everyone. We did a lot of research about what we wanted to budget and spend, and for us, we found that the sweet spot is we hope to be averaging about $4,000 a month for our travel budget. And when I say travel budget, I really mean our life budget. So it includes everything, all of our insurance, any kind of subscriptions, utilities, miscellaneous expenses, in addition to the typical, food, lodging, transportation. Right? So all in, we try to be $4,000 a month. Plus we allow plus for our income, for our taxes, but generally that's our goal: spend $4,000 a month.
Or spend a maximum of $4,000 a month.
Yeah, understanding that some months will be more, some months will be less, but we want to average it out $4,000 a month. So what we have found is been quite surprising and pleasing.
We have stayed well within that budget with all the planning that we've done in terms of the pet sitting, the 28 to 30 day minimum stays. Those two, or probably, well, they were two of the biggest players. And then the third one being very careful credit card planning. And again, Greg is the genius behind the science of the credit cards, collecting them at the right times, in the right order, with different benefits for different groups of hotels, such as IHG hotels, World of Hyatt hotels, Marriott, that kind of thing, so that we're racking up points, we're getting discounts. Put those three together, and yes, everything that we plan to do, we've achieved budget-wise with flying colors.
Yeah. So we're going to put together some separate videos that are more detailed about the exact costs, but we have stayed well within that framework of being under $4,000 a month. If there are specific things about our trip that we've talked about that you'd like to see budgets, let us know.
Yeah.
Put a note in the comment. We'd be happy to respond to that. It'll help us decide on what topics we should focus on as we do more of these videos. But that has been one of the terrific things, and as I said, point 18 about this has been how great it's been for reducing our cost of living. As we wrap up, point 19 is
really a simple one, but very important, and that is that full-time travel is easier than it looks. There are a lot of There are a lot of videos out there that are giving you all kinds of information on things that you should do, suggestions, really important points, absolute necessities, and it can be really overwhelming, and it can leave you with a lot of great information, but also wondering, how am I going to juggle all this and make it all work? And all I can say is just dive in. Once you start doing it, you'll find that it's completely manageable, and a lot of what is being said you'll start to feel like it's not a burden to try to remember it. It's a lot of really good common sense, and once you start to dive in and start working on it, it's not that hard. It's not hard to remember. Certain things you plan first, get them out of the way, and then you're all set. It's just not that hard. It's absolutely doable.
Yeah, it's kind of like parachute jumping, I think.
It is?
Yeah. Well, here's like the plane ride up, packing the parachute, getting ready, all the planning you got to do. It's all pretty terrifying. And when you jump out, definitely terrifying. But when you get to open the chute and you're riding down, it's all fun. I just think that it's like gravity taking over. Once you make the leap, it really is not hard. You're going to go that way.
Okay, well, I do kind of see your point, but
so
way better than parachute jumping.
Yeah. Full-time travel really is easier than it looks. There's a lot of things that you need to do in preparation and planning, but when you do all those things, the rewards are so great, because after that's done, and once you start, your life becomes infinitely easier. Now, it's just you're living it's a very simplified lifestyle. It's not complicated. I
think this might be the simplest lifestyle I've ever experienced, really.
Yeah, it's just really easy living.
Yeah, and that's kind of the winding up, and the last things that we can...
Point number 20.
Yeah, quite simply.
This is fun.
This is fun.
This is fun. We're saying 3 times.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's our list of 20 big things that we've learned in the last 90 days or so. We're just thrilled to have learned them. We're also happy about having learned about how to mount a YouTube channel and get it up and running. If you've stayed with us this long, thank you. And please, again, like, subscribe, share, tell your friends who might have interest in this, because we really enjoy putting these things together and keeping our friends and family up to date through YouTube. So we hope if you're going to join this lifestyle soon, maybe we'll see you out on the road someday. We hope so. Thanks, everybody.